What if you discovered that your family was cursed because one of your ancestors created a puzzle box that could unleash hell, and the only way to end the curse was to kill the demons it summoned? For centuries, the merchant bloodline has been hunted by an ancient evil. Now, one man has built a station in space with a single purpose: trap hell itself and kill everything that comes through. Hey everyone, welcome back to Midnight Recaps. Tonight's nightmare is Hellraiser Bloodline, 1996. The film begins aboard Space Station Minus in the year 2127, where we meet Paul Merchant, the man who built the station. Inside his cabin, Paul has a robot locked inside a room. Using a special control glove, he operates the robot remotely, guiding its hands as it manipulates the Lament Configuration. Eventually, the robot solves the puzzle. The box falls to the ground and changes shape. Hooks and chains suddenly burst from it, destroying the robot. The box then creates a portal to hell, and Pinhead emerges from it. And just like that, Paul's carefully prepared plan is already facing its biggest problem. But before Paul can finish whatever he has planned, a ship arrives at the station to capture him. The team is led by Rimmer, and they break into the station and apprehend Paul. They discover that Paul has rerouted all available power to his personal quarters, shutting down most of the station and leaving only his section operational. Rimmer interrogates Paul about his missing crew. He explains that he sent them away and warns her that they need to leave the station immediately. Paul tells her that he is playing the endgame, finishing something that began centuries ago. When Rimmer asks what he expects to catch, Paul reveals that he intends to catch hell itself. He explains that he built the station for one reason: to create the biggest trap in the galaxy. When hell arrives, he plans to burn it away in a blaze of light. Then Paul begins telling her how it all started. For centuries earlier, we meet his ancestor, Philip LeMarchand, a talented toy maker who has just completed what he considers his finest creation: the first puzzle box. The box was commissioned by a wealthy aristocrat named Duc de L'Isle, a man obsessed with black magic and a leader of the occult. Philip is proud of his work, believing it will establish his name and secure his family's legacy. What he doesn't realize is that he has created something far more dangerous than an ordinary toy. The box contains a terrible power capable of releasing evil, sin, and pain into the world. After finally completing it, Philip celebrates his achievement with his pregnant wife. He shows her how the box works, but to Philip, it is still nothing more than an ordinary toy box. Soon after, he leaves to deliver it to Duc de L'Isle. At Duc de L'Isle's mansion, we meet his apprentice, Jacques, who has brought a peasant woman to be killed. Duc de L'Isle welcomes the woman and even offers her a meal. But after a brief conversation, Jacques murders her by strangling her with a rope. Later, Philip arrives with the puzzle box and hands it over to Duc de L'Isle. But something immediately feels wrong. Suspicious and terrified by the strange noises coming from inside the mansion, Philip sneaks outside and looks through a window to see what Duc de L'Isle intends to do with his creation. What he witnesses horrifies him. Duc de L'Isle makes an incision into the woman's lifeless body and removes her innards so they can replace her flesh again. They hang her skin from the ground with chains. Using the Lament Configuration, Duc de L'Isle begins a dark ritual. As he chants his incantations, dark energy flows through the box. The wall breaks apart, opening a portal to hell. The empty skin begins to writhe, inflate, and reform into a living body. Then the demon princess Angelique takes possession of it, emerging into the mortal world as Duc de L'Isle's demonic servant. After the ritual, Jacques is shocked and frightened by what he has witnessed. But Duc de L'Isle reminds him that a summoned demon belongs to the person who commands it, unless that person stands in hell's way. In other words, the one who summons the magic controls the magic. Meanwhile, horrified by what he has seen, Philip flees back to his workshop. Now realizing that his creation has opened a portal to hell, Philip begins designing blueprints for a light-based countermechanism called the Elysium Configuration, which he hopes can destroy the demon. It is a difficult task, but Philip knows he has to try. His only hope is to steal the box back. When he sneaks into the mansion, however, he discovers that Duc de L'Isle has been murdered. The murder is connected to Jacques' betrayal and Angelique's desire to break free from Duc de L'Isle's control. Before Philip can take the box, Jacques knocks him down and tells him that it is already too late. The demons will walk the earth, and Philip is responsible because of the little puzzle box he created. Jacques also curses Philip and his bloodline, declaring that they will suffer until the end of time. Then he orders Angelique to kill him. Just then, Philip's wife arrives at the house looking for him and finds him badly wounded and barely alive. Philip asks her to forgive him and tells her to leave, urging her to save herself and their child. It's a brutal moment, because the very creation Philip thought would secure his family's legacy has now become the reason that family is cursed. Back in the present, Paul explains to Rimmer that Angelique eventually had many boxes made from Philip's original design. But even that wasn't enough for her. She wanted a box capable of opening the portal permanently. And the key to accomplishing that was the merchant bloodline. Paul explains that generations passed, and eventually one of the merchants encountered Angelique. The story then moves to 1996 in New York, where we meet John Merchant. John is having a nightmare in which Angelique is holding a blood-covered heart in her hands. He wakes up screaming, and his wife comforts him before going to check on their son, Jack. The following morning, John's wife tells him that she is worried about his constant nightmares and suggests that he see someone because they are getting worse. She blames his grandmother, reminding him that she was strange and used to tell him stories about how important he and his family were. John insists that not all of it came from his grandmother. He says he feels other things too, almost like memories, and they are beginning to haunt his work as well. Meanwhile, in Paris, Angelique discovers a magazine featuring John Merchant on the cover alongside the Manhattan skyscraper he has designed. She immediately decides she wants to go to America, but Jacques refuses to let her. After 200 years of immortality and a comfortable life in Paris, Jacques has no interest in leaving. Angelique responds violently, attacking him and slashing his face with her finger. As she continues torturing him, she reminds him of the #1 rule about standing in Hell's way and tells him that he has violated it. The toymaker bloodline has survived. Then Angelique finally kills Jacques by ripping his heart directly out of his chest with her bare hands. So much for 2 centuries of peaceful immortality. Back in New York, John is attending the grand opening of his Manhattan skyscraper. While giving a speech to the press, he suddenly sees Angelique. Her presence triggers visions and flashes in his mind, causing him to stumble through parts of his speech before eventually leaving. John has hidden the puzzle box inside the foundation of the skyscraper he designed. Angelique senses the dark energy connected to the building and uses it to locate the exact place where the box is hidden. She then lures a building security guard named Edwards down into the construction areas of the skyscraper by promising to sleep with him. Once they reach the location, Angelique asks Edwards to play along and tells him to close his eyes because she has a surprise for him. While his eyes are closed, she smashes through the wall with her hand and pulls out the original Lament Configuration. Angelique gives the box to Edwards and has him solve it. The moment he does, the box falls to the ground and changes shape. Chains and hooks shoot out, piercing Edward's face. A portal to hell then tears open in the wall, and more chains emerge from the opening and drag him inside. Pinhead emerges from the portal with the chatter beast before the portal closes. And now the real nightmare has arrived. Inside the building, John has decorated the lobby and entertainment room with wall art inspired by the Lament Configuration. It is here that Pinhead and Angelique remain. Angelique explains everything about the box to Pinhead. He tells her that she has been away too long and describes the room not as an ordinary space, but as a holocaust waiting to wake itself. The following day, Angelique goes to meet John at his workplace. John immediately recognizes her from his visions. She tells him that he is the one they have been waiting for. Angelique notices a portrait painting of the Elysium Configuration displayed on John's wall. John explains that the design has been in his family for thousands of years and that he has been working on something based on it. He shows her his architectural schematics and blueprints. These plans contain his prototype for the Elysium Configuration, a light-based design passed down from Philip's original sketches that is capable of permanently sealing the gates of hell. But John admits that he has not perfected it yet because something is still missing. For Angelique, this confirms that the merchant bloodline is still working to undo Hell's portal, making John a serious threat to her plans. Later, Pinhead confronts Angelique and demands to know where John LeMarchand is. Angelique replies that he is nearly within her control, but Pinhead grows dismissive and impatient, boasting that if he were in charge, he would already have LeMarchand broken and begging to serve them. Angelique defends her subtle approach, arguing that Pinhead's modern version of hell has forgotten the slow delight of temptation, passion, and chaos. Pinhead counters that harvesting countless souls and holding their endless suffering inside himself is his version of slow delight. He tells her that her ancient, seductive methods are outdated and that hell now belongs to his brutal, order-driven regime, warning her to adapt. Angelique angrily refuses to back down, insisting that she will take LeMarchand her way. Meanwhile, two brothers, Mark and Michael, are patrolling the building when they discover a hidden passageway. They enter to investigate, but the door locks behind them. With no other choice, they go deeper into the passage and eventually stumble upon Pinhead and Angelique. The brothers point their guns at them and warn Pinhead to back away or they will cause him some pain. That word immediately catches Pinhead's attention. He tells them that pain is only a shadow and that it has a face. Then he tells them, "I am pain." Pinhead restrains both brothers with hooks and chains. He then uses two halves of a metal mask to physically press their faces together, while a giant spinning drill-like device violently grinds, fuses, and twists their skulls into a single shared mass. Afterward, Pinhead turns back to Angelique. He tells her that temptation is worthless and that suffering is the coin of the realm. He intends to teach the human merchant the value of suffering and force him to reveal his secret. And there is no greater suffering for a parent than the loss of a child. Later, John's wife is doing laundry when she hears Jack screaming. She rushes to him and finds him with Pinhead. She asks what he wants, and Pinhead makes it clear that he wants bait, live bait. Soon after, John arrives home, only to discover that his family is gone. Pinhead has left behind a clue telling John where to find them. John immediately rushes to the skyscraper. There, he finds his family, but Pinhead's chatter beast is blocking his path. John tells Pinhead that he doesn't know who they are and doesn't care. All he wants is his family back. Pinhead tells him to complete his work, and in exchange, he can have his family. He explains that the puzzle box is a pathway to hell created by John's ancestors, while the room beneath the building represents the potential for something much bigger, a much larger portal. Pinhead intends to help fulfill that promise. As they walk toward the room, John suddenly makes a run for it with his family. They split up, with John telling his wife to use the stairwell while his son takes the elevator. John then returns to Pinhead. Pinhead tells him not to flatter himself because he doesn't actually want John. He wants his gift. He explains that the box everyone once believed was so powerful is merely a model. What Pinhead wants to create is the true version. No longer will the Cenobites have to seep into the human world like pests through cracks in the baseboards. This time, they will open the gates once and for all. Before John can do anything else, he hears his son screaming and runs toward him. Meanwhile, John's wife is being chased by the chatter beast. She runs into a room and barricades the door, but the creature manages to break through. Inside, she finds the puzzle box. She uses it to send the chatter beast back to hell. John eventually finds Angelique with his son Jack. They force him to begin the work. John appears to comply, entering the required commands into his computer to open the portal. But secretly, he has programmed the system to activate the Elysium Configuration instead and seal the portal forever. The building's mirrors and laser mechanisms deploy, but the mechanism overloads and fails before it can destroy or permanently seal the Cenobites. Pinhead quickly realizes that John has tricked him. He sends his hooked chains through John's neck and severs his head. Then John's wife comes rushing in with the Lament Configuration. She solves the puzzle, and hook-laden chains shoot out from it and grab Angelique, dragging her back toward the doorway to hell. The box then explodes, creating a powerful dimensional vortex that forcibly sucks Pinhead back into the abyss along with the remains of the box. The nightmare in New York finally comes to an end, saving John's wife and her son. But the merchant family's nightmare isn't over yet. The story returns to the present, back in 2127. Before Rimmer captured Paul, He had successfully solved the puzzle box with the help of his robot and summoned Pinhead, Angelique, now a Cenobite, the Twin Cenobite, and the Chatter Beast. But Paul's cabin is completely sealed, preventing the creatures from escaping. Pinhead tells Paul that they almost gave up on him, waiting for him to play and solve the puzzle. Paul calmly responds that it has been a long wait for a short game. Paul is finally ready to destroy Pinhead and his Cenobites, but Rimmer interrupts by capturing him. Paul tries to explain the danger to her, but she doesn't believe his story. She tells him that she doesn't believe in hell. Paul warns her that something is already on the station and wants their souls. Whether she believes in hell or not, it is going to take them there. Rimmer orders Paul to be locked up. Meanwhile, Parker goes to inspect Paul's cabin. He hears someone crying and calling for help. Without hesitation, he shoots the door open and enters to investigate. Inside, he finds Pinhead and his Cenobites. Pinhead attacks him with a hooked chain, tearing his face apart before another chain strikes his skull. Pinhead then notices Paul's sketches and realizes that Paul has a plan. He orders his Cenobites to kill the crew. Eventually, the others discover Parker's lifeless body. They all remain vigilant, knowing that something is still loose on the station. As Carducci patrols the station, Angelique appears inside a mirror. When Carducci tries to investigate, she reaches through the reflection, drags him halfway inside, and chops his head off. Chamberlain later encounters Pinhead. He fires his gun at him, but the weapon has no effect. He drops it and runs away to hide. For a moment, he thinks he has escaped, but the Chatter Beast eventually finds and kills him off-screen. With no other choice, Rimmer frees Paul so he can continue with his plan to destroy Pinhead. Rimmer and Edward attempt to escape, but they think Carducci may still be alive. Edward goes looking for him, while Paul tells him where he can find the puzzle box so he can protect himself. Edward finds the box inside the cabin. But before he can use it, Angelique and the Twin Cenobite find him. Edward tries to solve the box, but he fails. The Twin Cenobite splits apart into two separate bodies and sandwiches Edward between them, brutally crushing and absorbing his flesh into their bodies. Paul tells Rimmer to get to the shuttle, but Rimmer refuses to abandon him. Paul tells her that he will come right after her. As Rimmer makes her way toward the shuttle, the Chatter Beast attacks her. She runs and traps the creature in a hallway, then increases the pressure, killing the Chatter Beast. Meanwhile, Paul uses a hologram to distract Pinhead while he and Rimmer reach the shuttle. Paul then activates the Elysium Configuration. Powerful lasers and mirrors create a field of perpetual light, while the entire station transforms into a massive version of the Lament Configuration. The light becomes trapped inside the enormous box. Then the station self-destructs. The explosion destroys Pinhead and finally severs the connection between hell and earth forever. And after centuries of the Merchant bloodline trying to undo the terrible mistake created by that first puzzle box, Paul finally completes the plan his ancestors began. In the end, the same bloodline that accidentally opened the door to hell is the one that finally finds a way to shut it for good. That's the end of tonight's recap. If you made it this far, you clearly enjoy horror recaps. Subscribe so you don't miss the next terrifying story. What did you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're craving another terrifying story, tap the video on your screen right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one.